The average American household spent just under $6,000 on groceries last year. That number has climbed every single year for more than a decade. And every spring, millions of home gardeners try to fight back by planting vegetables. Tomatoes, peppers, squash, lettuce. They buy new seeds, new starts, new soil amendments, and they do it all over again the following year, and the year after that, because almost everything in the modern gardening tradition is annual. You plant it, you harvest it, and then it dies. Then you pay again. But that cycle is not inevitable. It is, in fact, relatively new. For most of recorded agricultural history, human beings anchored their food systems around plants that came back on their own. Perennials. Crops you put in the ground once and harvested from for 10, 20, sometimes 30 years or more. Many of these crops still exist. They still grow. They still produce. But you have almost certainly never been told about them. Not by seed catalogs, not by agricultural extension officers, not by the industry that profits every time you start over from scratch each spring. This is a ranking of 5 of those crops. 5 plants you put in the ground once and never replant. And the deeper you go into this list, the more you start to understand why they were forgotten in the first place. Number 5. The Egyptian walking onion. Most people think of onions as a once-a-year crop. You plant bulbs or seeds in the spring, pull them in summer, and buy more the next year. The Egyptian walking onion operates on an entirely different principle. Instead of producing seeds the usual way, it grows a cluster of small bulbils at the top of its stalk. When those bulbils get heavy enough, the stalk bends over and touches the ground, and the bulbils root themselves right where they land. The plant literally walks across your garden, reproducing itself year after year without any human intervention at all. This onion has been cultivated for centuries. Some food historians trace its use back to ancient Rome and the gardens of the Near East, where perennial alliums were considered essential household crops. It was a common dooryard plant in colonial America, valued precisely because it never needed to be repurchased or replanted. A single planting could sustain a family's onion supply for decades, and yet today, you will not find it on any major seed catalog's front pages. You will not see it in any grocery store produce section. The modern allium industry is built around annual hybrid varieties that must be repurchased every single season. The Egyptian walking onion does not fit that model. It does not generate repeat sales. It simply keeps growing. And for a household looking to reduce its grocery dependency year after year, that is exactly the point. Number 4. Good King Henry. Before spinach took over the produce aisle, European households relied on a completely different perennial green. Good King Henry was one of the most widely grown vegetables in medieval and early modern Europe. It was called the poor man's asparagus across parts of England because its young shoots could be harvested and eaten exactly like asparagus stalks in spring, while its broad leaves served as a reliable cooked green straight through summer. One planting could produce dependably for 15 to 20 years with no replanting and very little care. It came to North America with early settlers and was grown in kitchen gardens from New England to Virginia. Then it quietly vanished. Spinach, which is an annual, took its place. So did chard and kale, both of which require replanting every year. The displacement had nothing to do with nutrition or flavor. Good King Henry is rich in iron, protein, and vitamins. It simply could not be commercialized the way annual greens could. You cannot sell a plant every year if the customer only ever needs to buy it once. By the early 20th century, Good King Henry had been almost entirely erased from the American gardening consciousness. The plant itself never went extinct. The knowledge of it did. Number 3. Sea Kale. Thomas Jefferson grew sea kale at Monticello. He wrote about it in his garden journals. He served it to dinner guests. In the late 1700s and early 1800s, sea kale was considered one of the finest vegetables in the Western world. It is a perennial brassica, closely related to cabbage and broccoli, but unlike its annual cousins, A single sea kale plant can produce harvests for 20 to 25 years from just one planting. In England, it was a prized delicacy for centuries, blanched under clay pots in early spring and served at fine tables. Jefferson imported seeds from Europe and actively tried to popularize it among American growers. He largely failed. Not because the plant did not thrive in American soil. It did. But American agriculture was already beginning its long turn toward annual monoculture. The economics of industrial scale demanded crops that could be planted, harvested, cleared, and replanted on tight, predictable cycles. Sea kale refused to cooperate with that model. It just sat in the ground and kept producing, season after season, asking for almost nothing in return. Today, most Americans have never heard of it. The plant that one of the country's founders personally championed has been reduced to a botanical footnote. Meanwhile, the grocery store price of broccoli has nearly doubled in 15 years. Number 2. The sunchoke. Before European contact, indigenous peoples across eastern North America cultivated a tuber that could produce thousands of pounds of food per acre, year after year, without replanting. The sunchoke, also known as the Jerusalem artichoke, is a species of perennial sunflower that forms dense, starchy tubers underground. Once established, a patch of sunchokes will produce indefinitely. Not 5 years, not 10, 20 years, 30 years, longer than most people stay in the same house. When French explorers first encountered the sunchoke in the early 1600s, they shipped it back to Europe, where it became a staple food almost overnight. It fed populations across France, Germany, and the Low Countries for generations. But in North America, where it was native, something very different happened. As colonial agriculture consolidated and commercialized, the potato, an annual tuber originally from South America, was promoted as the standard root crop. The potato required replanting every year. It required purchasing seed stock every spring. It fit neatly into the emerging commercial framework of American farming. The sunchoke did not. It could not be controlled the same way. It spread on its own. It persisted on its own. It did not need the supply chain. By the 20th century, the sunchoke had been actively dismissed by American agricultural institutions. Some extension officers even classified it as an invasive weed. A plant that had fed indigenous nations for thousands of years and sustained European populations for centuries was officially reclassified as a nuisance, primarily because it did not conform to the economics of annual agriculture. Today, when it appears at all, it shows up in upscale specialty grocery stores at $4 or $5 a pound. A crop that grows itself in almost any soil, in almost any climate, with no irrigation and no fertilizer. Number 1. The American Groundnut. This is the crop that could have changed the entire trajectory of American agriculture. Apios americana, the American groundnut, is a perennial vine native to eastern North America. It produces dense, protein-rich tubers underground and nitrogen-fixing nodules along its root system, meaning it actually builds and improves the soil it grows in rather than depleting it. A single planting can produce food reliably for 20 years or more. When the Pilgrims arrived at Plymouth and nearly starved during their first winters, it was the groundnut, supplied and taught to them by the Wampanoag, that kept a significant number of them alive. Multiple colonial accounts describe it as one of the most important food sources in early American settlement. It was calorie-dense, it was high in protein, more so than potatoes by a significant margin. It required no annual plowing, no annual seed purchase, no annual soil amendment. And it gave back to the earth while it fed the people standing on it. No other crop on this list checks every box like the American groundnut. Perennial, high calorie, high protein, nitrogen fixing, native to this continent, proven across thousands of years of continuous indigenous use. And yet it was never developed, never systematically bred for improvement the way corn, wheat, and soybeans were, never given the institutional funding, the research programs, or the policy support. The reason is not complicated. A crop that feeds people for 2 decades from a single planting, that manufactures its own fertilizer, and that thrives without irrigation across most of the eastern United States, does not create a recurring revenue stream. It does not sell seed every spring. It does not sell synthetic fertilizer. It does not sell irrigation equipment. It does not participate in the economy that modern industrial agriculture was designed to sustain. The American groundnut is not extinct. It still grows wild in forests and along riverbanks across much of the eastern half of the country. A small number of university breeding programs are quietly working to develop improved cultivars with larger tubers, but it remains almost entirely absent from mainstream awareness. The most complete perennial food crop native to North America, the one that literally saved the earliest European colonists from starvation, is not taught in schools, not sold in grocery stores, and not mentioned in a single line of major agricultural policy. Every crop on this list shares a common thread. None of them disappeared because they stopped working. None of them were replaced by something nutritionally superior. They were each replaced by something more profitable for someone other than the person eating the food. And in a country where grocery prices climb a little higher every single year, where the average household feels that pressure a little more with each passing month, the fact that these plants still exist, still grow, and still produce year after year after year might be the most useful piece of information that no one is talking about.